Welcome to Project Healthy Schools. This is Lesson 7, Jumpstart Your Day. Objectives for Lesson 7 are: students will be able to understand the importance and benefits of eating breakfast, identify the obstacles to eating a healthy breakfast and ways to overcome them, evaluate breakfast options to determine if they are healthy choices, and modify unhealthy breakfast options so they meet the healthy breakfast criteria. Vocabulary words for this lesson are fast, whole grain, fiber, calcium, and vitamin D. Lesson materials: the Jumpstart Your Day Breakfast Foods handout.
Welcome back to Project Healthy Schools. Before we get going with Lesson 7, let's quickly review what we talked about in Lesson 6. In Lesson 6, we talked about eating a variety of fruits and vegetables. And the importance of that is because we found out that fruits and vegetables contain a lot of micronutrients and phytochemicals, which are very important to the overall health of our body. We also talked about eating a variety of color when picking fruits and vegetables, and we made a rainbow of color salad to demonstrate that. Lesson 7 is called Jumpstart Your Day, and we're talking about eating breakfast and how important that is. So who can tell me some important reasons we eat breakfast? Any ideas? Well, some important reasons we eat breakfast are: we have more energy. We get along better with our classmates. We're in a better mood. We have better behaviors in class. Test scores can be higher, better concentration. We're calmer and less anxious than non-breakfast eaters. We have faster memory recall. We improve our class attendance because we feel better. We have greater vitamin and mineral intake, and we're less likely to be overweight. These are all things that studies have proven true compared to, comparing people that eat breakfast versus people that don't. All right, but let's think about the word breakfast and what does it really mean? And let's kind of break it into two pieces. So what is a fast? All right, a fast is something when we abstain from something for a while. So we're talking about eating, all right? And sometimes people fast for certain reasons. Maybe you know of some of those reasons. Oftentimes it's for religious reasons or maybe medical reasons. If you're going in for a blood test, they usually ask you to fast so that nothing you have eaten recently will, influence that blood test. Maybe before a surgery, things like that. People ask you to not eat for a certain period of time, and that's a fast. All right. In a break, we break the fast. So, we all fast every night when we go to sleep. So maybe we eat dinner at 6 o'clock, we go to bed at 9 or 10, maybe we had a snack, and then we sleep that 8 to 10 hours and we haven't eaten. So that's a fast while we sleep. So a breakfast is when we break that fast, and it's something that when we eat in the morning. But what are some barriers to breakfast? And barriers meaning, what are some things that get in the way of eating breakfast? Because breakfast is skipped by a lot of people. We're really trying to promote and encourage you to eat breakfast. But let's talk about some of the things that sometimes get in the way. By knowing those things, we can kind of plan around them and make sure that we're getting breakfast every morning. So some barriers, a lot of times it's just because we don't have time. A lot of times we're rushed in the morning, right? So we get up and we have somewhere to get to. Usually we have to get to school. Our parents have to get to work, and everybody's busy. And I think one of the main barriers for eating breakfast is time. Sometimes we don't feel very hungry in the morning either. We wake up and our metabolisms have really slowed down because we've been sleeping. So our appetite's not always really high. So it's important though, even though we're not feeling really hungry, to get something in our bodies to get that metabolism moving to get our day started. Some other reasons we might skip, we may not like breakfast food. Some people don't like foods that are typically eaten for breakfast. But keep in mind, you don't necessarily have to eat traditional breakfast foods. You could eat other foods that you like. Any kind of nutrients, as long as it's balanced and you're getting different portions of my plate to get yourself going in the morning, would be great. So other ways to overcome the time barrier, which I think is the most common. A lot of times we just don't have time in the morning to get going. So we could find breakfast foods that we can grab and go. Something that we can take with us and we can eat on the bus or we can eat on our way to school. Things like that are great. You can also pre-pack your breakfast for the morning. You can make breakfast the night before. That way when you get up, you can just simply warm it up and eat it. You can also eat breakfast at school. Most schools offer breakfast. And those are great ways to overcome that time obstacle. So we're going to get into an activity soon. We're going to need the breakfast food chart, which looks like this. So make sure you've downloaded that or printed that off before we get started with this activity. Now before we get going, let's circle all the way back to our lesson 2. Do you remember lesson 2? Lesson 2 was about food culture. My question to you is, thinking back to lesson 2, where we discussed food culture, why do you think people from different places might eat different breakfasts? Well, hopefully you remember that culture plays a role in the foods that we choose. Climate impacts the types of breakfasts foods can grow and be produced. Family preferences and habits. So not all people eat American type breakfasts, and we're going to talk about an example of that. So the first 2 samples are American, kind of standard traditional American breakfasts, and then we're going to talk about a Japanese breakfast as well. Now to analyze if these are healthy breakfasts, we're going to use this criteria. All right, we're going to see if there's a whole grain. We're going to talk about what a whole grain is. Is there protein or dairy included? Is there a fruit or a vegetable included? And does the breakfast have no added fat or sugar? Now you don't have to get all 4, but if the breakfast that we look at has 3 of these, we're going to call that a healthy breakfast choice. Before we get too far into this lesson, let's go ahead and stand up and get our hearts pumping with a brain break. Okay, hopefully you have some space and you're ready to move. All right, for today's brain break, we're going to do another countdown. We're going to do it with 2 movements, the first being a tuck jump. Now a tuck jump is pretty simple. We're just going to jump and we're going to lift our knees like we're jumping up onto something. All right, so we're going to hinge at the waist, bend at the knees a little bit. We're going to jump and bring our knees up. That's one tuck jump. Okay, we're going to mix that with a sit-up or a crunch. So we're going to go to the floor. We want our knees bent at about a 90-degree angle. We want to try to keep our feet on the floor. We're going to go down. Now we can either sit all the way up, or if you prefer to do a crunch, all right, you can put your hands to your side and just reach forward. Okay? So that's our 2 movements. Now we're going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 again. So we're going to do 5 tuck jumps, 5 sit-ups, 4 tuck jumps, 4 sit-ups, and so on until we're done. Are we ready? Here we go. So let's get out our breakfast food chart and take a look at our first breakfast. Now the first breakfast is made up of plain oatmeal, natural peanut butter, skim milk, and a sliced banana. Let's take a look.
Let's start with breakfast number 1. Are the grains included in this breakfast whole grains? Yes, oatmeal is a whole grain, so we can check that box off. Who remembers what a whole grain is from the My Plate lesson? Well, a whole grain, they are products that include all 3 parts of the kernel and have more nutrients and fiber than refined grains, which only contain some part of the grain. Fiber is a type of carbohydrate that is only found in plant foods. It keeps you feeling full and helps with digestion. Foods high in fiber include fruit, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and beans. Is there a source of protein in this breakfast? Yes, the peanut butter is a great source of protein, as well as the skim milk. Skim milk contains calcium, which is another one of our vocab words. Calcium is a mineral that provides structure for your bones and teeth, and vitamin D helps the body absorb calcium needed for normal growth of your teeth and bones. Is there a serving of fruit or vegetables? Yes, once again, we have a banana in this breakfast, so we can check off that box. Is there added sugar or added fat in the breakfast? Where do we find it? No, there isn't. So all 4 boxes can be checked off. So is this a healthy breakfast? Absolutely.
Now let's take a look at breakfast number 2. What's in breakfast number 2? We have quick pancakes with butter and syrup, hash browns, bacon, and sausage. Let's take a look and analyze this breakfast.
So let's look at American breakfast number 2. Are the grains included in this breakfast whole grains? No, Bisquick pancakes contain refined grains, so we cannot check this box off. Is there a source of protein? Yes, the bacon and sausage are considered a source of protein. However, remember that most breakfast meats are not healthy options, and it is important to choose leaner breakfast options such as turkey, Canadian bacon, lean ham, or turkey sausage. Is there a serving of fruit or vegetable? Yes, hash browns. The potatoes that make hash browns are considered a serving of vegetables. However, there are better vegetable choices that provide more nutrients. Is there added sugar or added fat in the breakfast? Where do we find it? Yes, it's found in the butter and the syrup, so we will not put an X in this box either. So we only have 2 out of our 4. So is this a healthy breakfast? The answer is no.
Now let's take a look at a Japanese breakfast. Now this is going to be a lot different than some of the traditional foods that we eat in America. So it's pretty interesting. The Japanese breakfast is made up of white rice, broth, soup, seaweed, fish, pickles, vegetables, tofu, and egg omelet roll. So let's analyze this Japanese breakfast now.
So let's take a look at the Japanese breakfast. Are the grains included in this breakfast whole grains? No, white rice is not considered a whole grain, so we can't count that one. Is there a source of protein? Yes, the tofu, fish, and the egg are all sources of protein, so we can definitely check off that box. Is there a serving of fruit or vegetables? Yes, seaweed and vegetables. Is there added sugar or added fat in the breakfast? And if so, where do we find it? No, there is no added sugar or added fat in this breakfast. So we have 3 of our 4 marked off. So we can call this a healthy breakfast.
So just like breakfasts can be very different around the world, they can be very different even in your classroom. Different people have different preferences and different families have different traditions or foods that they like. So now it's your turn to come up with your favorite breakfast. If you can't think of a favorite breakfast, maybe just think about the last breakfast you ate and write that down in your chart. So in the first part of the chart, write down all of the things. Don't forget the things that you drank. Don't forget the things that you added to your breakfast. So go ahead and pause the video and write out the breakfast on your chart. Welcome back. Hopefully you have your breakfast written down. Now let's go ahead and analyze it based on the criteria that we talked about earlier. Remember, we need to get 3 out of these 4. So first of all, take a look at your breakfast. Does it contain whole grain? Now if your breakfast contains some sort of cereal, is it made out of whole grain? If the breakfast contains some kind of a bread, is it white bread or is it a whole grain bread? If you have a whole grain in there, go ahead and check that box off. All right, does your breakfast contain any dairy or protein? So it could be milk or milk-based product, or it could be some sort of a meat or some sort of a nut or something that contains a little bit of protein. Does your breakfast have protein or dairy? If it does, go ahead and mark that box. What about a fruit or veggie? You know, orange juice would count. If you had 100% orange juice, that would count as a fruit. If you like to eat a piece like an apple or something for breakfast, or sometimes you can add veggies to your breakfast. So if it contains a fruit or a vegetable, go ahead and mark that box off. And then last but not least, does it have added sugar? You know, a lot of cereals, as we talked about in our sugar lessons, have a lot of added sugar. So if it's cereal, make sure it doesn't have a lot of added sugar. You know, if we add a lot of syrup to our pancakes, that's sugar. So really keep an eye on that. You know, and we also want to keep an eye on added fat. All right, so if it doesn't contain that, you can mark that box off. And now remember, all you need is 3 out of 4. So go ahead and take a look at your breakfast. Was it healthy? So as we talked about earlier, one of the biggest barriers to eating breakfast is time. So I personally like to prepare my breakfasts in advance. So I'm going to show you my favorite breakfast recipe and show you how I organize it so that I can just get up in the morning and warm it up and eat it on the go, so I never have an excuse not to eat breakfast. Okay, welcome to the kitchen. As I said, I'm going to show you one of my favorite breakfasts that I like to prepare in advance that I can grab and go quickly in the morning. Now please always remember, before using a stove or cooking or using any knives to chop anything, that we talk to a parent and we have adult supervision while we're doing it. Also, don't forget to wash your hands really well before you prepare your food. The ingredients I use for this breakfast are a little bit of broccoli, a tomato, 2 eggs, and whole grain bread. So the first thing I do is chop up the tomato and the broccoli. Next, I'm going to heat up a skillet of medium heat, and I'm going to add just a little bit of olive oil to the pan. Now while my skillet's heating, I like to pre-scramble my eggs. So I'm going to crack 2 eggs into a dish or something separate from the pan. And then I'm going to go ahead and scramble them up. Now once my pan is good and hot, I'm going to add all 3 ingredients. So I'm going to add the eggs first to the skillet. I'm going to add my broccoli. I'm going to add my tomatoes. Now this won't take long to cook, so I'm going to work these eggs around. I'm going to stir in the broccoli and the eggs until the eggs are cooked all the way. And I'm going to keep moving them around, which is also going to kind of help warm up the tomato and the broccoli. So now remember, I'm making this in advance, so as soon as my eggs are done, I'm going to put it in some sort of a container that I can put in the refrigerator and save for the next day. All right, I have my materials for 2 breakfasts all ready to go. I'm just going to put those in the fridge. Okay, so the next day I would just grab the dish I cooked the night before out of the refrigerator. I'm going to go ahead and pop it in the microwave for 30 seconds. In the meantime, I'm going to take a piece of my whole grain, this is whole grain oat nut bread, and pop it in the toaster. So I pop that in the toaster, put that in for 30 seconds, and I wait. Once my toast is done, I pull it out, and I like to just put this right on top of the bread. Now if you want an even more to-go option, you can cut the bread in half and make a little sandwich. And there you have it. You have a quick, easy, healthy breakfast. We have whole grains, we have a protein with the egg, we have a fruit and a vegetable, because the tomato is technically a fruit, and we have no added fat or sugar. And this is something that you can just easily grab and go. So to wrap up lesson 7, let's talk about what we learned today. So what were some health benefits of eating breakfast? Well, we learned that eating breakfast helps our mood in the morning. It helps us concentrate throughout the day. Will give us more energy. We'll get our metabolism working. So those are all really good benefits of eating breakfast every morning. So what factors did we talk about that equal a healthy breakfast? Well, we talked about if the breakfast includes 4 things, and if 3 of those 4 things are met, then it's a healthy breakfast. So we talked about if it has whole grains, if it has dairy or protein. We talked about keeping a fruit or a vegetable in the breakfast. And we also want to watch out for added fat and added sugar. And finally, what's one thing you can take away from today that you could share with someone else? What's a healthy message that you could pass along to either your family or a friend or someone else you know? Thanks for being with me today. I'll see you in lesson 8.